Well, thank you, Ron. It is indeed a great privilege to be here to honor our good friend, John Lewis. It's wonderful to see so many turn out, and I wish you all and welcome you all to Statuary Hall. We gather today to honor Representative John Lewis. He is a man of principles, a man of American principles. For that reason alone, I could think of no better recipient of the Freedom Award. For over 2 decades, this award has recognized those who are uniquely dedicated to freedom, democracy, and representative government. That dedication can be exhibited in many forms. It can be seen in the voting booth, in classrooms, in petition drives, and in the halls of this very building. But however noble each of these pursuits are, the history of this man shows something even greater. In his fight for freedom, in his mission to fulfill the American promise, he faced what few of us have ever had to face to enjoy our freedoms: fear. We are blessed in this nation to enjoy the privileges of democracy and to exercise our freedoms without fear. But sadly, for millions of African Americans in our history, that has not been the case. James Fillmore Cooper, author of the great American works like The Last of the Mohicans and The American Democrat, once said, "The man who can right himself by a vote will seldom resort to a musket." The opposite is also true. People denied their rights might well result to violence. And it is not difficult to see why. With no established form of recourse, what choice do those who are denied freedom to choose? But John Lewis chose a different and higher path. He did not take the road of violence and hate. In his and his generation's quest for freedom, he did not corrupt himself with the same sins of those who worked against him. He was the president of Student Nonviolence Coordinating Committee, and he and his leadership, and as an individual, fought for the rights due to every person, not with weapons, but with the force of rhetoric and virtue of peace. Jesus teaches us that we are to love our neighbors as ourselves and turn the other cheek to those who strike us. Yet in our own lives, how easy it is to preach and practice this call when our neighbor is kind and we are struck with words instead of fists. John Lewis endured a much harder feast. His enemies had tear gas, nightsticks, dogs, and whips. He confronted handcuffs, imprisonment, death threats, and fallen brothers. I remember just a few years ago, I was walking with John through Selma, Alabama, on the same path Selma to Montgomery march that John led. As we were walking towards the Edmund Pettus Bridge, John would point out the different stores of where they were. I still recall, he looked to an old Woolworth's. You know what he told me? They wouldn't let me eat at the counter. One time in Nashville, I went in to a Woolworth and tried to eat at the counter, and I was arrested. We crossed the bridge in peace that day with thousands behind us. But when John led that march across the same bridge in 1965, he was beaten by a mob of state troopers and deputized citizens. He can't remember who carried him, but he was wounded and bloodied. John was taken away to a church with a head injury, and he didn't know if he would live. As we walked into the bridge, I'd ask him where was the part that had happened. He said, "I could not remember from this point on." It is easy to see that John showed physical courage, but he has also demonstrated the highest moral courage. Under this onslaught of brutality and uncertainty, John did not match violence with violence. He stood with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and demanded peace in the face of war, solidarity in the face of division, and love in the face of hate. Those were those in the time inflamed by injustice done against African Americans, who felt that the American system was lost. They thought it would be easier to tear down the structure of the old and start anew rather than move forward with that what we had. But for all of America's shortcomings, John Lewis stood with those demanding that the promise of America not be discarded, but instead realized in full by being purified in practice. As Lewis said to the crowds in 1963 during the March on Washington, he wanted the people to protest across the nation, quote, "until true freedom comes, until the revolution of 1776 is complete. The designs and principles of our founders are good, though our nation fell short for far too long. We honor John Lewis today, not as a revolutionary, but as one who, to paraphrase Dr. King, came to cash the check the architects of our republic wrote, the promissory note demanding that every American is guaranteed the right of liberty, life, and the pursuit of happiness. John Lewis held America to its promise. By doing so, he put his life at risk and suffered ridicule and bodily harm. And yet in history, he was vindicated. We honor you today for holding our nation to its highest ideals and ensuring that the true existence of liberty and justice for all. It is an honor to be able to serve in these chambers, but I will tell you one of my highest honors is to be able to stand with this man. I thank you for what you have done for this nation, but as a grateful citizen, I thank you for righting the ship at the right time. God bless you.